The Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, would you please call the roll?
Senators Bridges, Cook, Quorum, Court, Crowder, Danielson, Donovan, Finberg, Fields, Foote, Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hill, Heisey, Holbert, Lee, Lundeen, Marble, Moreno, Pedersen, Briola, Rankin, Rodriguez, Scott, Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Story, Tate, Todd, Williams, Winter, Woodward, Zenzinger. Mr. President.
Here. With 35 present, 0 absent, 0 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Danielson, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the Journal. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the Journal of Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019 be dispensed with, and that the Journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Committee reports.
January 23rd, 2019, Committee on Health and Human Services, Extradition, American Committee following Senate Bill 83, be referred to Committee on Whole Fair recommendation placed on the consent calendar. January 23rd, 2019, Committee on Health and Human Services, Extradition, American Committee following Senate Bill 82, be referred to Committee on Whole Fair recommendation placed on the consent calendar. January 23rd, 2019, Committee on Health and Human Services, Extradition, American Committee following Senate Bill 81, be referred to Committee on Whole Fair recommendation placed on the consent calendar. January 23rd, 2019, Committee on Health and Human Services, Extradition, American Committee following Senate Bill 80, be referred to Committee on Whole Fair recommendation placed on the consent calendar. January 23rd, 2019, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, Extradition, American Committee following Senate Bill 42, be referred to Committee on Whole Favorable Recommendation. January 23rd, 2019, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, Extradition, American Committee following Senate Bill 29, be referred to Committee on Whole Favorable Recommendation placed on the consent calendar. January 23rd, 2019, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, Extradition, American Committee following Senate Bill 25, be amended as follows, as so amended, be referred to Committee on Whole Favorable Recommendation. January 23rd, 2019, the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology has had a consideration had hearing for following appointment and recommends the appointment place be confirmed. Executive Director of the Department of Regulatory Agency, effective immediately for a term expiring at the pleasure of the Governor, Patricia Salazar, Denver, Colorado, appointed. January 23rd, 2019, Committee of Business, Labor, Technology, Extradition, American Committee following Senate Bill 46, be referred to Committee on Whole Favorable recommendation placed on the consent calendar.
Senate Services.
Correctly printed, Senate Bill 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 105, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, and 105. Correctly engrossed, Senate Bill 27, 39, 44. Correctly engrossed, Senate Bill 16, 21, 28, 45, and 58. Correctly enrolled, Senate Bill 11.
Introduction of bills.
House Bill 1059 by Representative Martin, Senator Tate, concerning removing redundant language in the educator licensing statute regarding requirements of out-of-state applicants.
Education. Third reading of bills. Third reading of bills. Members, we are on third reading. Also, as a reminder, all members except the sponsors are limited to 2 opportunities to speak, no more than 10 minutes each time. The Secretary will notify someone if they're nearing their time limit. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Bill 027.
Senate Bill 27 by Senator Crowder and Winter and Representative Valdez D. concerning authorization for county to use any lawful method to give final disposition to an unclaimed body.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 27. Ask for a favorable vote on it. Thank you.
Is there any discussion on Senate Bill 27? Seeing no further discussion, the motion is for the passage of Senate Bill 27. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excuse, Senate Bill 27 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Moreno, Priola, Heisey, Tate, Marble, Williams, Janal, Todd, Gardner, Court. Quorum. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Bill 044.
Senate Bill 44 by Senator Zenzinger and Representative Hooten, concerning the statewide emergency medical and trauma care system of the Department of Public Health and Environment in connection with eliminating the requirement that the State Board of Health cooperate with the Department of Personnel in adopting certain criteria.
Senator Zenzinger.
I move Senate Bill 44 on third reading and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion, any further discussion on 044? Seeing none, are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 44 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senator Crowder, Senator Cook, Senators Marble, Priola, Woodward, Scott, Tate, Court, Todd, Janal. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 039?
Senate Bill 39 by Senators Story and Zenzinger and Representative Michelson Janae, concerning allowing interdistrict transportation of students only by adjacent school districts subject to the school district's mutual consent.
Senator Story.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 39 on third reading.
Senator Story.
Thank you, Mr. President. After tolerating hours of extended pleas and attempts of persuasion with false and misleading statements to not only amend but also kill Senate Bill 39 during yesterday's second reading of the same, it is my great honor and pleasure to present Senate Bill 39 for third reading to you and to my colleagues. Senate Bill 39 is a straightforward bill that simply cleans up House Bill 1306 from the prior year's session. In the waning hours of session last May, a Senate committee amendment was injected into House Bill 1306, and then the bill moved forward without following the appropriate process. This amendment to a bipartisan sponsored bill that addressed transportation needs of foster care students and other out-of-home placement students dramatically altered the original intent of the bill. This misguided Senate amendment to House Bill 1306, identified as Section 7, had an intentional focus on transportation for all students across Colorado. This Section 7 amendment would allow districts to engage in transporting students from adjacent school districts to their own district without seeking consent from the adjacent districts. This was an intentional, dramatic change to House Bill 1306, which in its original form narrowly focused on foster care students and other out-of-home placement student transportation. Just prior to the governor signing House Bill 1306, the rogue Section 7 Senate amendment was noticed. The governor gave consideration to not signing the bipartisan drafted bill with the rogue Section 7 Senate amendment due to the dramatic impacts to statewide student transportation, stretching far beyond the original focus on foster care student transportation. In the end, the governor's higher priority was to ensure the original merits of House Bill 1306 would more immediately be met, specifically for the transportation of foster students and other out-of-home placement students, even while knowing that signing this bill would compromise historic statewide student transportation statute. The governor signed the bill with the rogue Section 7 Senate amendment that had slipped through without notice or without Senate floor debate. As the session expired, in a matter of hours, time had run out to initiate any legislative fix to the rogue Section 7 Senate amendment of House Bill 1306. The insertion of the amendment was challenged in court by astute districts. A ruling found the amendment violated the single subject rule and therefore was found to be unconstitutional. Senate Bill 39 simply removes the rogue Section 7 Senate amendment from House Bill 1306 to restore it to its original form, bipartisan crafted state, to address foster care student and other out-of-home placement student transportation. This clean bill version of House Bill 1306 continues to provide the opportunity for these students to remedy otherwise potentially challenging transportation needs, so these students may continue attendance at their home school even while they may now live in a different district. Since the governor's signing of this bill in May of 2018 and continuing forward, the benefits of this bill provide significant educational stability to students who are likely experiencing other challenging circumstances beyond school transportation. I urge my colleagues to join me in cleaning up House Bill 1306 by removing the rogue Section 7 Senate amendment that has been found by the court to violate the single subject rule and to be unconstitutional. I request a favorable vote on Senate Bill 39 to do just that.
Senator Hill.
Mr. President, colleagues, we have had a long time yesterday to talk about this, and sadly we spent very little time actually talking about the policy. The actual policy, the legitimate debate about whether or not this is good policy or not. We made our case for why we think Section 7 of House Bill 1306 was good policy. We made our case for why we think repealing that through this bill is bad policy. I just want to reiterate that because that's really what's at stake here. And hiding behind one of 100 trial court decisions that is, if it stands, is going to undermine much of what we do. There are multiple lawsuits already filed, including on Senate Bill 267 based on that ruling. It has the chance to undermine most of what we do here. At the end of the day, we passed a bill last year that got through both the Senate and the House, and the governor signed it. Yes, we all have concerns about just about every bill that we support up here. How many times have you said to a neighbor, to a constituent, to a colleague, to a lobbyist, you know, I don't love every aspect of this bill, but I think it makes it better. And let me tell you why transporting students makes it better. Right now, we have 178 school districts in Colorado. We could go through the history of how we got from several thousand down to 178, but the reality is, we say in Colorado, your education destiny is determined by what school district you're in, by what geographic area of the state you are in. And if you're in some areas of the state, within a small several-mile radius, you could be in upwards of half a dozen school districts within a small mile or two radius. Half a dozen different districts. And are we really going to say to those folks who cannot move, who don't have a parent to drive them from one place to another, that they are stuck going to whatever school is closest to them? Colleagues, I don't think that's what we actually believe. I don't think any one of us actually believe that there's a one-size-fits-all one system, one school fits everyone in a neighborhood mentality of education. We've seen it again and again and again in so many different policy areas. That there are unique circumstances, there are unique situations, that every single one of our students has their own gifts and strengths and weaknesses and abilities and fears and ideas and ambitions. And we need a variety of different opportunities for every single one of those kids. And if one school district in Colorado says, you know what, we've got what you need. If one school district says, hey, it makes sense, we've got what works for you, and you go so far as to fill out the paperwork and apply to go to that school district, this bill is going to say that school district is not allowed to go pick that kid up. This bill is going to say it is not appropriate to reimburse a foster parent for driving that kid, whether it's a half a mile or a few miles or 20 miles away, to get the education that's best for them. It is saying we believe, us 35 in here, we believe we know better for what's good for all of Colorado's students than those students working with choices within and without of their districts. Colleagues, it's really that simple. And we are clinging to a system for system's sake. And it has been said at this well this morning that false and misleading statements were made. Colleagues, there's nothing false or misleading about the fact that every single one of our students deserves to be able to go to school wherever in Colorado they darn well please. I ask for your rejection of this bill in support of the students in Colorado.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't come to the well yesterday because we weren't talking about policy, but I wanted to correct some things that the sponsor had said about a lack of discussion, a lack of debate last year. Indeed, I'm going to give you many of the points that I gave last year during that debate. I live in a rural part of the state where people want to go to different schools that may be 20, 30 miles away. And right now, the school district takes their buses up to the edge of the school district. Parents drive to a meeting place. They get out on the edge of the highway and get on a bus so they can then go the rest of the way, 15 miles to that school. Is that safe? Is it a good idea to have 5, 6, 10, 12 parents drive and congregate on the side of a road, whether it be an entrance to a pasture or a road intersection from a county road, so that the bus can pull off the highway? You can load all those kids up onto a bus and then take them to the school that best fits those parents' needs? We tried to fix that last year. We did fix that last year. And instead of waiting for this process to continue through the court system, we're going to use that to hide behind as we change the policy to imprison our kids of less fortunate families from choosing schools that they need to go to that best meet their needs. I see this on a daily basis. I live 2 miles from one school district, 4.5 miles from another school district, and live 20 miles from the school in the district that my children went. My neighbor up the road drives across the district to that meeting place to take their kids to that school because it better meets their needs. The less fortunate families can't do that. The less fortunate families that may have their the parents going to work at 7. Well, maybe 7 it's okay because many of those kids, my kids got on the bus at about 7. So maybe that works. Or they, unfortunately, there are kids that are underage that drive themselves to those bus stops down a county road because that's the only avenue they have to go to the schools that they want. Members, if you vote for this bill, you're taking away the ability for less fortunate people to choose the best school to meet their needs. I would ask for your no vote.
Members, before I call on the next senator, I do want to remind you of the memorandum that you received prior to the start, dated December 18, 2018, conducted by and signed by the minority leader, myself, which reminds all conduct of business on the Senate floor of recorded final actions do include third reading, to refrain from sidebar conversations. So please remember that this is a memo that went out on the first day. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was actually not going to speak this morning for the allotted 10 minutes, and I have a blank sheet of paper, so I doubt that I would be able to fill up that 10 minutes with remarks not prepared. But I was compelled by one of my colleagues' comments here in support of the bill. When I first came to the Senate, having spent 8 years in the raucous People's House, a Senate colleague who had not served there said, "You know, we're not like the House. We don't do those things over here. We have some dignity." Well, I don't recall in the House ever having the implication that my remarks in good faith in opposition to a bill based upon policy and legal theory were false and misleading. But if there's any confusion about what Senate Bill 39 might be about, in this senator's mind, it really has very little to do with the single subject rule. Because I can cite you some really serious breaches of the single subject rule that everyone in this chamber and everyone sort of out there in greater Colorado thought were just fine, and they got done in that bill. And no one ran to the courthouse to vindicate the single subject rule because of that particular amendment to the bill. So the single subject rule is a vehicle, and the discussion of the single subject rule and what this senator had to do to rebut that was to rebut the use of that vehicle concerning the greater policy. Now, my colleague from Sterling did an eloquent job of describing what the infirmities are of the policy in Senate Bill 39, how it is bad, particularly for the economically challenged children in our districts around Colorado. My colleague from Colorado Springs spoke about how within just a mile or so you may have 6 different school districts not adjacent to each other. Members, you may call this false and misleading when I say to you that it is my belief that Senate Bill 39 is bad policy. And if you want to come down here after that and rebut it and say, Senator Gardner, you're false and misleading to say it's bad policy. Well, that's a policy disagreement. And I respect the policy disagreement. But I will say, however sincerely you hold the belief about Senate Bill 39 being good policy, it is not. It is bad for school choice, which is a 3-decade policy, maybe even a century-old policy in the state of Colorado. You know, it's become trite in the General Assembly and everywhere else to say it's about the children, but you know what? It is. It's about children standing out beside the road when a bus has to go down and turn around and make U-turns in order to pick them up because a school district that's engaged in protectionism will insist on compromising their safety by saying, well, you can't pick them up on that side of the street. And we heard that in testimony about a similar bill last year. Members, it's not about the single subject rule, not about what a courthouse across the street and a trial judge may say and what an appellate court may or may not find, depending on the outcome of this bill. It's about whether or not this is good policy. And Senate Bill 39 is not good policy. And you can call that false and you can call that misleading, but my view is sincere. It is my firm belief, and it is my urge that you vote no on Senate Bill 39.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start by thanking my colleague from Sterling for keeping his comments to this bill. I think those comments are absolutely what we're talking about today, and what we are not talking about today is hurting foster kids. This bill does not hurt foster kids. I would not vote for a bill that hurts foster kids. I would not vote for a bill that makes it more difficult for the parents of foster kids. This bill does not hurt foster kids. I think that's really important, and it feels crazy that I have to say that standing in the well of the Senate, that I am not supporting a bill that hurts foster kids. I am supporting a bill that takes a piece of language out of a bill from last year that had nothing to do with that bill, and that's the single subject rule that we've all talked about. But I'm not down here defending this bill because of what I think was a violation of the single subject rule last year, because that fundamentally is not what is most important. It's not what is most important to me about this bill. It is not what all of us should be voting on. What we should be voting on is what is good for foster kids. And what happens if we don't pass this bill is that foster kids and their families are left hanging in the wind. Sure, there's some vague guarantee that they should get funding for whatever transportation they happen to come up with on their own to get to their school of origin. And if staying in that school of origin is the right thing for that kid, that's where I want them to be, which is why districts right now, under laws that we have, work with those kids. They work with those families. They have conversations. We had the superintendents of Inglewood and Littleton come in and describe to us in detail exactly what happens. These kids are taken care of. Concurrent with the move out of a district, they have a meeting with the parents and the kids to figure out how to keep that kid in their school of origin if that's what they want. That's what happens. And if we don't pass this bill, that doesn't have to happen. These kids are left hanging in the wind. If we don't pass this bill, it is bad for foster kids. But let's be really clear, a lot of claims were made that this bill is bad for foster kids. And again, I hate to say it, I feel like I shouldn't have to say it. I wouldn't support a bill that is bad for foster kids. This is a good bill for our state. This is a good bill for foster kids, and I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Minority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. Members, thank you for the vigorous debate yesterday. On opening day, I talked about the reality, the truth under our Constitution that we are not just allowed to disagree. It isn't something that we're permitted to do. It's something we are responsible for doing. We represent different districts. The majority of people in your district may view the world in a very different way than the majority of people in the district that I represent. It is our responsibility to come and represent those views to the best of our ability. We stand here in the well and take an oath to do exactly that. Mr. President, I appreciate your flexibility this morning. Mr. Majority Leader, I appreciate your conversation yesterday during the debate on Senate Bill 39. There were some opportunities for me to offer suggestion that we might have avoided the prolonged debate and stayed more on track yesterday, and I am grateful for you being open to those suggestions. But we did take 3 hours on Senate Bill 39. I explained that the members who were here in the well cared passionately about this issue. And I referenced my predecessor, Mr. President, yourself and Leader Guzman. During my 2 years as Majority Leader, were very accommodating that if there were times when members were speaking, maybe just to burn the clock, they were very accommodating to sort of call off that and let's stay on track and go to committee. And I offered to do that, but not when members care passionately about a subject, which we saw yesterday. Mr. President, thank you for your patience yesterday as the process was respected and played out. Mr. President, I am disappointed this morning that that process that we are called here to do was described as false and misleading. We have decorum here in this chamber. And as I said on opening day, I look forward and I'm grateful to hear how your constituents see the world differently than the people who I represent, not unanimously. There are, of course, people, Mr. President, in Senate District 30 who routinely disagree with me, and that's okay. I would never describe their views as false or misleading. They're just different. And Mr. President, I would ask your consideration, possibly, not necessarily in a public forum, but maybe an apology is due and a good lesson learned that what we do here, it's okay to disagree. And if you disagree with me, I will do my utmost to respect that difference. Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I do have to agree that with the senator from District 1, from Sterling, that he is correct. There was a conversation, and there was a lengthy description of the challenges of transportation, and it did take place. But it took place during the conversation on Senate Bill 228, a bill to expand school choice. The conversation did not take place when the amendment was added to a bill about foster care students. I listened to the recording. The amendment was moved, no one testified, they voted, and the whole thing happened in under 30 seconds. Quote, The court finds and concludes beyond a reasonable doubt that Section 7 of HB 18-1306 fails to comply with the single subject and clear title requirements of Article 521 and therefore should be stricken and void. This is language from the ruling by Judge David Goldberg in the case that examined the constitutionality of the amendment that was added to HB 1306 on foster children, also known as Section 7. We are not here today to debate the policy merits of an unconstitutional amendment known as Section 7. Instead, we are here to correct an error. The amendment that was added to HB 1306, a bill designed to ensure the educational stability of students in out-of-home placement, was added in the last minute with no notice and with the intention of resurrecting a bill that had died the previous day to expand school choice. And because Section 7 had nothing to do with foster children, taking it out will not affect the provisions that have already taken effect and are already supporting our foster children. So consider this, also from the judge's ruling on page 17. Quote, the Senate Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs made only one addition to House Bill 1306, Section 7, which was previously not addressed in House Bill 1306 and was tacked on and the only Senate amendment to the bill. Senate Section 7 was identical to a different bill, Section 2 of Senate Bill 228. Senate Bill 228, titled Concerning Improving School Choice in Traditional Schools of a School District, was postponed indefinitely. The purpose of Senate Bill 228 was to allow open enrollment free from, quote, provisions that create barriers to school districts and to allow school choice through open enrollment. As previously described, Senate Bill 228 did not pass beyond committee, and Section 7 was added the next day to House Bill 1306. Continuing on with the judge's ruling, quote, the prohibition against including multiple subjects in a single bill is meant to prevent abuses such as log rolling, riders, and omnibus appropriations bills. Log rolling. Now that's a term that I was unfamiliar with, so I looked it up. And in fact, the judge defined it in his ruling. Log rolling. The practice of jumbling together in one act incongruous subjects in order to force passage by uniting minorities with different interests when the particular provision could not pass on their separate merits. The amendment that was added was identical to 228 on expanding school choice, and it was postponed indefinitely the day prior and then added to an entirely different bill, not with the aim of ensuring the educational stability for students in out-of-home placement. The amendment was log rolled into House Bill 1306, and for those reasons, it needs to come out. The judge further concludes on page 18, in consideration of how 7 section is disconnected to the other sections in House Bill 1306, and with no notice regarding Section 7's change to transportation in House Bill 1306's title, unified with the obvious log rolling which occurred when Section 7 was tacked on to House Bill 1306 after the school choice bill failed in committee, and combined with the crucial purpose of House Bill 1306 and the governor's inability to line item veto, it is apparent the addition of Section 7 to a crucial bill deprived the governor of his ability to consider each bill's subject separately. So we heard yesterday, why not let the appeals process play out? Because the unconstitutional amendment is bad policy entered through a bad process. Either the appeal will affirm the lower court ruling and we will have to strike the language, or it will reverse the ruling and we should still strike the language. In either case, Senate Bill 39, the bill before you today, returns the program to support foster children to its intended purpose, and removes a mandate on schools that we should not be making. Like everything else in this bill, we are restoring the original language. There is no need to adjust the original language through various amendments because that is a different debate for a different time in its own bill. It is not this bill's intention to add anything new or to remove anything that the courts affirmed in the original bill. Everything this bill strikes or inserts simply brings us back to where we were without the amendment, period. The original law provided for mutually consenting adjacent districts, so that is exactly what we are doing here. And any other improvements to the law should absolutely be discussed, absolutely be debated, and absolutely be brought through its own process in their own bills, each of which should abide by a single subject restriction. I would ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 39. Are there any no votes? Senators Sonnenberg, Heisey, Crowder, Hill, Gardner, Rankin, Woodward, Lundin, Quorum, Scott, Tate, Smallwood, Priola, Cook, Marble, and the minority leader. With 19 aye votes, 16 no votes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 39 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Todd, Bridges, Winter, Court, Williams, Fields, Janal, Moreno. Please add the president. Committee reports.
January 23rd, 2019, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration of Mayor's Committee as following. Senate Bill 26 be postponed indefinitely January 23rd, 2019, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration of Mayor's Committee as following. Senate Bill 48 be postponed indefinitely January 23rd, 2019, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration of Mayor's Committee as following. Senate Bill 43 be referred favorably, Committee on Appropriations.
Announcements. Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, many of you probably have heard of Ag Council. It is a perennial group in this building that really brings together all aspects of ag in one room. They have made an important change this session that I hope those of us in our chamber who may not have grown up or lived with ag will take an opportunity. To be more accessible to the General Assembly, they have moved their morning meetings into lunch meetings and are going to use those opportunities to not only hear from you on issues that may impact them, but also hopefully to share their story with us. So in that spirit, I hope that some of you can find time today to attend Ag Council. From noon to 1 is a lunch and learn session. Today's topic is what is Colorado agriculture? And then from 1 to 1:30, they'll go into kind of their roundtable discussions, which I've always found incredibly informative, quite spirited, and exactly what you think this building should be about. I believe it's in House Committee Room 112 today, but probably worth building in a little bit of time to make sure we find the room because it has been in flux. So again, Ag Council, they've made a move from morning to afternoon just to make themselves more accessible to those of us in this chamber. So in response to them making that accommodation for us, I hope that we can find time to pay respect to the ag industry and attend Ag Council when you are available. Thank you very much.
Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, last night you had a flyer on your desks, and the Business, Labor, and Technology Committee, we want to make sure that we have some open communications and are understanding the business voices from the labor community and from the business community. And this is open to all of you in the Senate. We will be sharing with you right now the bills that will be coming through our committees and talking about the issues that are faced by business and the labor community. And I'm proud to announce that this is going to be chaired in a bipartisan way, and I am very proud to have my colleague from Centennial, I just want to make sure I get it right, from Centennial to join us in this bipartisan conversation and understanding the issues that we face in our state from the labor and the business community. So it is open to any and all of you, and we'll make sure that you have the dates. But this was on your desk last night, and we have a consistent date and time that we're meeting. Would open it up to all of you at any point you would like to attend.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President, and just want to point out that the meeting today is at 4 o'clock, so pay attention to the flyer sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. Happy snowy morning. We want to invite you to the Colorado Cancer Caucus, which is meeting today at noon in 357. And
correction, 11:30.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. 11:30 to 1:15 in Senate Committee Room 357. Hope you can all attend. They'll have some fascinating information about cancer research and hopefully also help talk about some great things going on in my district. Update on state funding for cancer screening and education, state cancer plan. Catch it if you catch it in time, so on. Hope to see you there.
Thank you.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Transportation and Energy will be meeting at 11 a.m. this morning in room 352. We have a lot of people here to visit with us today, so please be on time.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate recess until 2 p.m. today.
You have heard the motion. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the Senate will be at a recess, in a recess until 1400 today.